this, and we are going to roll. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Louis B. Free Radio Show, Brain Food from the Heartland. As promised, I have Bill Humbert, the book, Expect Success, the Science of the Over 50 Career Search, recruiterguide.com, part of the recruiterguide.com. Bill, I'm having too much fun talking with you off air. So tell us a little bit about yourself, if you would.
So I'm a true DC native. I was born 9 blocks from the White House. And I grew up in Hyattsville, Maryland, inside the Capitol Beltway. And at age 8, I became an entrepreneur. I was the oldest of 7 kids. I had a Maryland.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was the oldest of 7 kids, and I had my next sister, Shirley, she was probably about 6, and then Jean was 5, and our mom would give us 25 cents a week to do chores around the house. And so when I was 8, it was the first time I was able to ride my bicycle to the drugstore where they had a penny candy shelf.
Oh, yeah.
And so for 25 cents back in, the 1950s, you could buy 2 pockets full of penny candy.
Yeah.
And that first time I came home, Shirley and Jean watched me empty my pockets of all the candy. And they said, "Where'd you get the candy?" And I said, "Oh, at the drugstore." "Would you get some for us?" And I said, "Sure, but there's a 25 cent a person traveling charge." Now, I don't know wherever I got that traveling charge.
That's great. That's great. Well, shipping and handling.
Right. But that summer, every 2 weeks, I'd get 50 cents in traveling charges in addition to my quarter allowance. Well, that worked the entire summer. And the next summer, I learned a little bit about what the market will bear and government interference. And I tried to raise the price to $1 per person per trip. And my sisters then complained to my mom. So I learned what the market wouldn't bear that at that point. And then my mom, being the government authority, was really nice, and she was smart. And she said, "I really like the fact that you're trying to earn extra money, but that doing it with your sisters is not the way to do it." And so she said, "I'll give you $1 a week if you mow the grass." Now, we came from our family lived on a postage stamp lot. And it was great. I mean, we didn't know. And so I cut the grass. And then after about 3 weeks of cutting the grass, I started looking down the street, and I'm going, they need theirs cut, and they need theirs cut. And so I took my parents' lawnmower and their gas, went down the street and mowed 2 or 3 lawns down the street and made $5 each lawn. And so that lasted until the next year. And then I decided I want more income that's regular. So I got a Washington Daily News paper route that had 30 customers. And so in the afternoon after school, I'd go out and deliver the newspapers. In the evenings, I'd collect what I needed from the newspaper or from the customers. Lots of times I got tips. And a year later, I got a Washington Post paper route. And the first one was 96 customers all over a hillside in Maryland.
Wow.
And so I was getting up at 4:00 in the morning to deliver the papers, going to school, coming home from school, doing a little bit of studying, and then in the evening collecting for the newspaper because I had to pay for them. And at 11, the route manager liked what I was doing so well with that paper route. He said, "Hey, I've got a morning route that's opening at an apartment development about 3/4 of a mile from your house, and it's only 140 customers." And I loved that because it was all inside, and it was do down by the doors. And I was making $140 per month in my Washington Post paper route. About $100 of that was tips.
Wow. And approximately what year? Approximately what year?
That would have been 1961. And so
That's a lot of money in 1960.
I was stuffing. They showed me how to get a savings account. I was just stuffing that money in a savings account. And so then at age 12, so right around 62, I said to my parents, I'm not going to go to Northwestern Public High. And they said, why not? And I said, well, the guidance counselor is going to put me in shop class and said I'm not smart enough for college prep. And so I checked out DeMatha Catholic High School, found out that it cost $400 a year, and took the entrance exam. And they were putting me in their top college prep course because they probably saw that I was an entrepreneur. And so I told my dad, I'm not going to go to Northwestern. And he said, what's your plan? I said, I'm going to go to DeMatha. He said, I can't afford to send all 7 kids to private school. And I said, I already checked it out. I've been accepted at DeMatha. It's $400 a year. I make $140 a month. I'm a Washington Post paper route. I got it covered.
Wow. That's an incredible entrepreneurial spirit at such a young age, at any age.
At any age, right. Right.
I looked up, for those, I looked up quickly, $100 in 1961 is worth almost $1,010 today. So people are thinking, well, it's a big deal, especially for a kid.
Right. Yeah. For, not even quite a teenager yet.
Wow. That's incredible. Incredible. And your path forward from there a little bit about how you became the recruiter guy.
So I graduated from DeMatha, paid my way through Assumption, now University in Worcester, Massachusetts. And there I worked 2 jobs. And then I got out of there and I had a short stint as a life insurance salesman right out of college. At the end of 5 months, I owed $400 in draw. I went, this is going the wrong way. I didn't have enough of this gray stuff then,
Yeah, I hear you.
And so I went into construction and I started at the Whiskey Bottom Apartments and Townhouses in Laurel, Maryland as a job clerk, and grew through that and went out in the field, ended up as a superintendent at the Pinnacle at 15th and Benning Road Northeast in DC. And after we moved up to New Windsor, Maryland on 30 acres, I decided I needed to do something else. So I talked to the farmer who was farming our land. I said, do you know anybody around here who needs a good person? And he said, well, Danny Roop's starting a fertilizer business. Why don't you talk to him? I said, okay. And so I went down, met with Danny, and he was showing me how to mix all the fertilizer. And then finally around 2:00, he said, I don't need to show you that. You're not going to be doing it. You're going to be out selling. Why don't you go out and talk to some farmers and come back and let me know what you found out? So, Louis, I was playing street football when I was a kid, right? I wasn't out on a farm. And finally, this was, 1980. This was when all the family farms were consolidating into larger farms. We had we thought 2008 was bad. Back in 1980 to 84, not only did we have a bad recession, but we had inflation that was at 14, 18%, depending on what you were buying. And so I had to drive a long way that afternoon to find a farm that had equipment in it. And I drove up the lane, got out of the car, and I listened. I heard some music in a building. So I went over to the building and it's 4:30. That's milking time. Walked in, it's a milking parlor. And the first stall, the farmer was there on a 3-legged stool, cleaning the udder of the cow, getting ready to stick the milker on her. So I walked up behind the cow and started talking to him about Danny's fertilizer business. Well, the cow's tail went up, and that had no special significance for me. And fortunately, it did for the farmer. He looked up, saw what was about to happen, grabbed me by the shoulder, ripped me
away. Fortunately, right? Just in time.
Just in time. And then he looked up and he said, "City kid, huh?" So I did that for about
Oh,
a
that's
year,
great.
year and a half. And somebody came up to me, a friend came up to me and they said, Bill, you're really good at sales and you're really good with people. Have you ever thought about being a recruiter? And I went, no, why? You'd make a hell of a lot more money. I said, sign me up. And so I became a headhunter, if you will, in 1981. And my first year, given, my timing wasn't really good. The economy was doing very poorly. And I made $3,625 with one introduction to this company called MCI Telecommunications. And I thought, now I know how to do this. And so the next year I made, I don't know, 20,000. The year after that, 27. By my fourth year, I led the recruiting company that I belonged to in fees. And we had 3 offices, one in DC, one in Baltimore, and one in Philadelphia, and 22 other recruiters.
Wow.
So that's, I started getting into, I learned the recruiting business. And recruiting mirrors the sales process perfectly. And so if you follow that process, the sales process for recruiting, you'll be successful. In 1990, I went into business for myself with the goal of becoming what is known as a contract recruiter. So I wanted to really focus on one company at a time. And a contract recruiter does that. And so my model was different than a lot. What I would do is I would work with one company at a time, charge them a flat monthly fee. Didn't matter how many people I helped recruit.
Huh.
In 1992, MCI came back to me. I introduced other candidates to them through the 80s. They knew I knew them. And they said, hey, we need to hire 1,500 IT professionals, and we're creating a contract recruiter group to do so. And so I went, great. And so they paid my fee, went into Pentagon City. So then I had a 76-mile one-way commute from New Windsor, Maryland, up in North Central Maryland, all the way down to Pentagon City, Virginia. And Louis, there were mornings when I was on the GW Parkway in Virginia, and we were right next to the Potomac River, and I looked out, and guess what? The Georgetown and GW crew teams were out there going faster than me when I was driving. Rush hour traffic in DC. So I helped them hire 100 people, 100 IT professionals in Pentagon City in 6 months. And I was supporting the IT for friends and family, 1-800-COLLECT, and commercial billing. In September, at the end of September, the commercial billing director came up to me and said, hey, I'm having an all hands meeting tomorrow. Do you want to come? I went, sure. And I heard that those were generally fun. And so I went, yeah, I'm in. So I went there, and he announced at that meeting that commercial billing IT organization of 200 people was transitioning to Cedar Rapids. Now, Louis, I grew up in Maryland inside the Capital Beltway. I didn't know what state Cedar Rapids was in. And I didn't want to appear dumb to them. I didn't mind appearing dumb to HR. So I went down to HR. I asked 3 HR professionals what state Cedar Rapids was in, figuring if they were moving there, they must have an HR operation there, right? They didn't know.
They didn't know. That's great.
So I graduated from college with an English degree. Next to my desk.
And you're showing, yeah, for listeners, you're showing the Webster. Go ahead, you describe it.
So it's a Webster's dictionary. I looked up Cedar Rapids in the Webster's dictionary, and I saw it was in Iowa. And I went, Oh, some poor recruiter out in the Midwest is going to get that gig. And I didn't know anything about Cedar Rapids except that it was a really small dot. And so that was Friday. Monday, I get a call from the guy I reported to in Colorado Springs. And he said, hey, Jim Zucco just walked into my office. Now, Jim Zucco is the CIO. And so he was in charge of all of IT. We called it data processing in those days.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
and so he told me that Jim decided that I was going to be the recruiter to help them transition commercial billing to Cedar Rapids. And I said, Jason, I just found out on Friday by looking it up in Webster's dictionary that Cedar Rapids is in Iowa, and that's all I know about Cedar Rapids. So you're going to have to give me 3 weeks to create a strategy. And by the way, how many people do you need in Cedar Rapids? And we were starting January 1st of 1993 through December 31st. He said, we need a minimum of 120 IT professionals in Cedar Rapids, December 31st, 1993. I went, whoa, okay. And so
Do that.
let me go figure out what's going on. So I called MCI in Cedar Rapids and I said, how many IBM mainframe shops are in Cedar Rapids? And they said 3. Ours is the largest by 2 times. And then there's Aegon Insurance that had about 40, I think. But their insurance and MCI, if you remember those days, they were crazy. They were wild. And so they would get 60% of the information, make a decision on a direction they're going to go, realize they're going to have to tweak it and go. Insurance, they get 95% of the information, then they build consensus, and then they go. And so those people would not be a fit. So I did not end up recruiting one person out of Aegon. And then the Line Energy sold their data processing group to EDS, and they had 18 people. I relieved them of 9.
Nice. So when you look back to, and by the way, the book, I love the book, Expect Success, the Science of the Over 50 Career Search, recruiterguide.com. Of course, we've got the links up. And by the way, the dedication to Linda, my loving and patient wife. I love that also. Things have changed dramatically, right?
Yes.
Your careers. What is it like today, and the difficulties that someone 50 or over would have looking?
One of the major difficulties that people have is they do not understand that the career search also mirrors the sales process perfectly. And what they try to do is they listen to the job board advertisements on TV, whether it's ZipRecruiter, Indeed, doesn't matter. And essentially what they say is, oh, all you got to do is post your resume on our job board and you'll have a job next week. Well, it doesn't exactly work that way, because what most people don't understand is the applicant tracking systems, both for the job boards and for companies, screen candidates out. And many times the job description is poorly written and the candidate tries to mirror the job description that's poorly written. And that could take out some of the important pieces of their skills and their experience. And what'll happen is the applicant tracking system, they say it's artificial intelligence, but I call it artificial intelligence. So all it is a keyword match. And if you don't have,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
If you don't have even the same number of the keyword that the job description has, you get dinged.
Wow.
And what many people do not know is that you have to really mirror that job description in order to become successful, to even be looked at. So I have an applicant tracking system that I use for my business, and it'll say this person's an 88% match. This person's a 50% match. This person a 30% match. Well, the 50s and the 30s never get looked at by most HR people. They'll only look at the 85% and above matches, which is a shame because a lot of good people are down here. I had a Harvard MBA complaining. I mean, they were sad. They said, I've been applying for these positions and a lot of them are executive positions. I've got a Harvard MBA. I can't even get a phone call. And I said, well, send me the job description, send me your resume, and let me just see what's going on. Well, this last job that they applied to, there is a little problem. Whoever wrote the job description probably just cut and pasted a good piece of it. And in it was, candidate must have a high school diploma. How many Harvard MBAs do you know will put high school diploma on their resume?
I can't imagine any, right? I mean, if you're a Harvard MBA, right, it's clearly you have a high school diploma.
Right. And they got dinged because of that. It's crazy. And so, you know, as I go through the book, I tell people what they have to do. The best way to find a job is to network their way in.
Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, you know, so I had this really kind of interesting role because over the past 40 plus years, I've been recruiting. And then over the last 26 plus years, I've been coaching people on finding a job. So I know at both sides of the table what's going on. And I've had people say, network, I don't know how to network. And I say to them, you're just being silly. They said, what do you mean? I don't know how to network. I said, when you were 4 years old and some friend of yours or a brother or sister walked by with an ice cream cone, what did you say? Where'd you get that? You've been networking your entire life. You just didn't even know it.
So they overcomplicate. I mean, they
overthink.
Overthinking it.
It's all networking is talking to other people. And there's something that I learned in a Dale Carnegie course, but you don't even have to take the course. I recommend it. But if you read How to Win Friends and Influence People, one of his principles is talk to the other person in terms of their own interests. And as I coach people, that's what I suggest to them. Talk to them in terms of their interest, and then they'll be interested in you. And that's networking. And many times in companies, the person who refers you to the manager will also get a bonus. So they're excited about referring you.
Yeah, yeah. It benefits them.
Right.
In more
monetarily.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, sometimes it can be $2,000, $3,000, or $5,000 that they get.
Ooh, real money.
Real money. Yeah. Depends on how badly the company needs me.
Nothing wrong with the $10 Amazon gift card, but certainly more than a $10 Amazon gift card.
Exactly.
So you're talking with them about their interests, and they become interested in you because you're listening.
Right.
Correct? Is that?
Yep. So both sides have something to gain in this, right? A manager, when you're talking to them in your interview, one of the things that you want to say to them is, you know, what do you feel are the biggest challenges I'm going to face in the first 6 months? Well, that's the reason they've got this position open. They should be able to talk to you about that. Now they're talking about their situation, and they like the fact that you are interested in their situation.
I see.
Okay. And so that's how they benefit when you say, well, great, I've got this experience, I've got those skills. These are a perfect match for what it is that you need to get done.
Wow. Interesting. And by the way, I love how upbeat you are and your personality is great. By the way, obviously, you know your stuff, but it's great when you have such an upbeat personality, recruiterguide.com. Expect Success, the science of the over 50 career search. Bill Ert's book. We've got links up. You can just go directly to recruiterguide.com and get more information. When you think about things, again, I haven't, since a quarter of a century, I wasn't, the last time when I got into radio, I wasn't looking for a job in radio. It was just, I didn't want to belabor it, but I had a business idea. I wish I could remember what it was, presented to a guy that owned radio station, and he was kind of, slouching in his chair. I said, listen, if you're not interested, I said, that's cool. I don't want you to feel obligated to listen to the rest of it. He said, well, I'm not interested at all in what you're talking about, but did you ever think of being a talk show host? I thought, well, I never thought of that. So things come again at odd times, if you will. But since that 25 years ago almost, everything has changed with things like you write about LinkedIn and Indeed and things like that. I mean, last time I applied for a job, you went in, I dressed up and I put a tie on, you went and physically filled out an application, made eye contact, extended your hand, those things. That's gone.
Right. Yeah. So, HR kind of, they have themselves inside of a fortress so they don't have to talk to people. And think about how they recruit. I don't do very many air quotes, but that's one. And the way they recruit is they get an open position, they get the job description, they throw the job description, here's what they do. They post, and then they pray that the best candidate happens to be looking at their posting.
You were showing, for listeners, you were showing someone like typing and then praying and looking up, praying.
And so that's what they call recruiting. Recruiting is getting on this thing called a phone and talking to people, because that's how you get their interest. And so I gave a speech last August at Disrupt HR in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And my speech was titled, Delete Recruiting from HR. And HR is an amazing organization in a company, very needed. Look at all their functions: compensation, benefits, culture, employee development, employee relations, HR tech. Those are all administrative or compliance organizations or functions. When was the first time you ever saw a compliance officer lead a company in sales? Never. And recruiting mirrors the sales process perfectly. And so it also mirrors the career search perfectly. And if you follow the process, you'll be successful. It's a reason after over 40 years, I'm still a recruiter. But 1% of all recruiters are left after 10 years of their career. 1%. So delete recruiting from HR, put it into operations where they're feeling the pain and where they have sales managers. They can solve that sales problem that they're having with recruiting.
I see. When you think about today, and again, I know you got to split in a couple of minutes, Bill, and hopefully we can do a part two. But again, what do I want to say? Skeptical of people looking for a job when they're older, if you will. I mean, 50 is young. It's all relative, right? For us, I was a kid when I was 50, right?
Right.
I was a kid when I was 60. But is there skepticism? I might wonder, and again, I'm just thinking this, not doing any of the kind of work that you do, but why you're looking for a new gig when you're 50? And there could be very valid reasons, certainly.
A lot of times they just get laid off, right? There's a merger and acquisition, and the acquiring company gets to keep their guys and women, and the other ones leave. And very rarely do they pick the best out of both and keep them. So that's number one. Number two is, in our world today, we're different. We're healthier than we were back 30 years ago. our brains are still functioning. We're not ready to go take a nap for the entire day. I'm going to be 74 in July. I'm excited about that. Part of the reason was there's such heavy betting that I wouldn't see the age of 21, that I was, I celebrate every birthday and I say, I beat you by 50 years. Yeah. And so, and my sisters and brothers were among those who thought there's no way. And part of the reason is I hitchhiked 15,000 miles when I was in college. And so I got a ride, and we can talk about it on the next time. I got a ride with four women in Santa Monica in 1969 in August, 2 weeks after Sharon Tate was murdered.
Oh. Wow.
And
They
were Charles girls. And they were trying to recruit the other guy I was hitchhiking with and me up to the Spahn Ranch.
Oof.
Of course, nobody knew who they were then, right? And so I kept hitchhiking. So
Wow.
I think the message there, though, is that this is really important. First of all, I set a goal to leave DC and be in Los Angeles 5 days later. That was my goal. Louis, we made it. And then the next year I set the goal 5 days to get to Santa Barbara. We made it. And then later on, we set the goal that summer to go from Santa Barbara to DC in 5 days. We made it. So setting goals is important to whatever it is that you want to do, whether it's personal like this or business.
It's interesting. We need to talk more about hitchhiking sometime, because I hitchhiked a lot and developed my own methods, if you will, that seem to work. I know you got a split, but that worked for me. My thing was have a sign about where you're going, because someone doesn't want to pick you up, especially on the freeway or turnpike, and then have to drop you in a mile or two or whatever. I'm sorry, I don't want to go off on it, but
no, I understand.
I learned certain things, right?
I still have my signs.
Do you?
The only one I don't have, is my LA sign. I gave it to this girl, but the rest of them I've got. They're behind this library right here.
Oh God! And you're, by the way, you are a fan of libraries.
I'm a huge fan of libraries, and that's the reason I have to leave here. We've got a little bit of time yet.
Got a couple minutes?
Yeah, we've got at least 5 minutes.
Okay, so again, and you and I could go all over the place. Libraries, hitchhiking. Say you brought back a lot of memories. I mean, I had good rides, and a couple of times I had to, when the car was slowing down for a red light, I had to jump out.
Well, I never had that, fortunately. Oh, but I had some close calls.
Yeah. You'll learn. Maybe we should talk off air about it sometime, because I had some close. Yeah, I ended up getting out of a car when a guy started driving into the woods or something, and I just didn't. It wasn't. And then I had to find my way out of the woods and figure out where I was. There wasn't, people now GPS. There was no GPS.
Right. Yep.
Figuring out where you were.
I think I told the story about hitchhiking to California in my first step. So my books are written in steps. So do the first step, second step. So by the time you follow all the steps, you should have a job. And the goal is to have a job in 90 days. And so you need to do a lot of networking for that to happen, but it's only 2 calls in the morning, 2 calls in the afternoon. In 90 days, you'll have a job. But in my first step was I created the acronym SCAMPS. And we can talk about that later, but that's how people should set goals. And I talked about hitchhiking across country the first time in that first step.
When your website, again, I know you've got library board meeting, so no one wants to keep you from that. But your website, the books, you've got books.
I speak. On both talent attraction and career search. Written 3 books on career search. I have. I'm the #1 Google and Bing ranked talent attraction consultant. So that means I have a ton of content out there, 142 television interviews, many podcasts. As a matter of fact, once I get the link for this, then it'll go up on my podcast page on my website. Yeah.
Again, obviously you're a wealth of knowledge and experience, but you're just a blast to talk with. And again, I say that respectfully to people that have a lot of experience and knowledge. It may oh boy, this is one of those, no filter between the brain and my mouth. My wife says my greatest asset's also my greatest liability, no filter. But that doesn't, I can still get information from them, but you're just a blast. You're so upbeat. You are a lot of fun to talk with, and obviously the knowledge and experience. So I hope you'll do a part 2 with me.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, Louis,
well done.
You're right. You are fun to interview, so Joanne said to me, "You're going to love interviewing with Louis." And I went, okay. And so this morning, the first thing I did was got on, because I didn't even know who you were until.
I don't know who I am sometimes, Bill.
I didn't know who you were until late last night. And I got on this morning and I listened to probably about half of Ed's interview with you. And I went, well, this is going to be fun.
Well, I hope I lived up to those expectations, but
you did.
I really want to do a part 2 with you soon.
Right.
This has been a blast. I know we haven't talked. There's so much. I've got so many questions, so many pages turned down in the book. Expect Success: The Science of the Over 50 Career Search. Bill Humbert. We'll do it soon.
Okay.
So much. Thank you so much. And thank you for those kind, generous words also.
Oh, thank you, Louis. It's been really fun for me, and you've got a great show, and I really recommend that people listen to other interviews that you've conducted.
Thank you.
Because they are fun and worth listening to.
Thanks. And maybe you and I should hitchhike. I keep thinking, I used to hitchhike to New York a lot, and I keep thinking, I should try to do that again. Of course, people close to me say, you really think someone would pick you up, Louis? Probably not. It would be a bad situation. I'd make a sign, though. I definitely have a sign. So,
yep.
Thank you, Bill. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend. I'll reach out to Joanne. We'll do it again.
That's perfect. Okay. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
You also. What a great guy, folks. And it is so upbeat. His personality is just fantastic. And then with all that